We're good? Hey everybody, this is Patrick Millikin from the Poison Pen Bookstore with another of our virtual events, and really excited to have with me S.A. Cosby, aka Shawn Cosby. Welcome, Shawn. It's great to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you guys for inviting me. I'm really looking forward to this.
Absolutely. You know, it's really, and congratulations on the publication of your new book, Blacktop Wasteland. Very exciting. The book's getting a lot of attention, deservedly, from all over the place, and it's really exciting to have you here. We have a lot to talk about, and also if you're watching on Facebook and you have questions, I'm flying solo here, so go ahead and send in your questions and I'll do my best to ask Shawn as many as I can. But I'm going to give you the old formal introduction, Shawn.
All right.
Okay, Shawn A. Cosby is a writer from southeastern Virginia, now residing in Gloucester, Virginia. Is that right, Gloucester?
Yeah.
Right on.
Gloucester.
Okay.
Gloucester. You good?
Gloucester?
You close.
Okay.
Yeah.
His short fiction has appeared in numerous anthologies and magazines. His short story, The Grass Beneath My Feet, won the Anthony Award for Best Short Story in 2019. His writing is influenced by his experience as a bouncer, construction worker, retail manager, and, I want to ask you about this, and for 6 hours, a mascot for a major fast food chain inside the world's hottest costume. Gotta ask you about that. Okay. When he isn't crafting tales of murder and mayhem, he assists the dedicated staff at J.K. Redmind, is that right? Funeral home as a mortician's assistant. That's got to be a fascinating gig.
Oh, yeah.
He's an avid hiker and is also known as one hell of a chess player. And as I said, his new book that just came out is called Blacktop Wasteland, and it's, as I understand it, the character, the protagonist of this book, Beauregard
yeah.
Bug Montague.
Yeah, Montage.
Oh, Montage, excuse me.
Yeah.
It's great. Had his first appearance in a short story of yours called Slant Six.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I wrote that story. One of my first paying stories was for the magazine Thug Lit, published by the great Todd Robinson, a great editor and publisher out of New York, and a great writer in his own right. And when he decided to shutter Thug Lit, he had some people he wanted to write for the last issue. And so I wrote this story called Slant Six, and it tells a story about Bug and how he came to acquire his father's '71 Plymouth Duster. And that story, a lot of people responded to it very well. Thankfully, it got an honorable mention or distinguished story mention in Best American Mystery Short Stories 2016. And I went on to do other projects, but Bug always kind of stuck in my head. I couldn't shake him, and I just wanted to know more about his story. Even though I had created him, I wanted to know more of his backstory. I wanted to know about his future, and wanted to know more about him as a character. And so after I published my second novel, my first detective novel, My Darkest Prayer, I sat down and started writing Blacktop Wasteland. And initially, it was going to be a heist novel that talked about issues of race and poverty and class, but it ended up being sort of a cathartic novel for me, talking about fathers and sons and tragic and toxic masculinity and the inheritance of pain that we sometimes are given from our parents and from our previous generations. And so he's a character that started out as just what I thought was going to be a one-shot, and now he's got his own book.
He's a wonderful character. Can you talk a little bit about, when we meet him as the book opens, kind of where he is in his life? He's about to lose his garage.
He's about to, he's at the end of his rope. He's a former getaway driver who drove for bank robberies, heists, all manners of illegal projects. He gathered all his funds, got out of the life, as he likes to call it, capital letter L, and opened an auto garage, settled down with his wife and kids. He has 2 kids in his current marriage, and he has a daughter from a previous relationship. And as the book opens, his business is going under. There's a new competitor that's opened up in town. His mother, who's terminally ill with cancer, is about to get kicked out of her nursing home. because of some financial issues and clerical errors. His daughter from the previous relationship wants to go to college, but she doesn't have money for the first semester tuition. And his wife and his sons want a better home. Like he says in the book, his wife wants a house that's on an actual foundation, not on wheels, because they live in a mobile home. And so he finds himself up against the ropes and contemplating dipping his toe back into the illegal underworld. And as the book opens, he's trying to raise money at a off the road or illegal street race or drag race with his prized possession, his father's 71 cherry red Plymouth Duster with a black racing stripe. And as we meet him, he is desperately trying to just tip his toe back into that world because he wants to desperately maintain this new life that he's created for himself. And it doesn't, as most often happens in a noir novel, it doesn't go that way.
It's funny. When I was a kid, I don't know, my dad might be watching this, but we had this. It was near and dear to my heart when you mentioned a Plymouth Duster, because in the 70s, when I was a little kid here in Phoenix, we had a green over white Plymouth Duster. It was green with the white stripe, and it had the white kind of vinyl interior. It was just such a cool car. And, yeah. And it's funny because I understand that particular car, there was like the muscle version of it, and then there was the regular kind of sedan version of it.
Yeah, you could get the upgrade package.
Yeah.
And the upgrade package came with a bigger engine and 4-speed manual transmission. My dad had one. So
did he really?
Yeah, he had one that was black with a white racing stripe, and it's always held a special place in my heart. He had to sell it, and so I'm a big fan of cars, muscle cars. I had cousins who love souping up old cars and tearing down. I live in an area where when I was a kid, it's grown up now, it's changed now, but when I was a kid, you could get on like Route 17 or Route 61 and not see anybody for miles. So you could jump in the back of, you could jump in your Maverick or your Duster or your GTO, or even if you had like an old school Bel Air and just tear off down the road, as fast as you could get it. And so I'm fascinated with American car culture. I'm fascinated with muscle cars. And so that's definitely cars and fast driving usually find their way into my writing.
Yeah, it's interesting, about cars, they symbolize so much in this country. It's kind of like, they symbolize American freedom in a lot of ways. And also, there's something about this car culture, because I'm with you, man. I'm fascinated by it, and I've become, kind of adult onset mechanic syndrome, I call it. I wasn't really that interested in it until about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I got a 1960 Cadillac Sedan DeVille, and,
nice.
and started learning how to work on it. It's a money pit, but I still enjoy tinkering with it. But there's something about, to an older, it's almost like an older generation, that we're losing connection with that sense of physical connection to our world. I don't know. And there's something about, it used to be like a symbol of manhood back, in earlier generations, to be able to tear an engine down, And there's something about that's been lost.
I think, I think there is definitely a connectivity that comes to working on a car. I grew up pretty poor, and we became shade tree mechanics, me and my brother, by necessity, because we didn't have enough money to take it to an auto mechanic. And so, I learned how to put on the alternator and brake pads, water pump it. I busted a couple sets of knuckles changing serpentine belts and stuff like that. And so it's, like you said, I think it's a rite of passage. It's a sign of manhood, or it used to be. But I think also there's something about being behind the wheel of a car, and for that brief moment, no matter where you're going or what you're doing, you always think in the back of your mind, I can just get on interstate, or I can just take ride this road out of town and never come back. There's a sense of freedom. There's a sense of restlessness. There's a sense of adventure that comes with a car. And I think, specifically the age of muscle cars of the 70s and 60s, there's something about, there's a sense of optimism and a sense of strength that comes from those in that time period. And I'm fascinated with the ideas that float around that in the ether. And so for Bug, like you said, that car it's more than just a car. It's a symbol of his relationship with his father. It's a symbol of his own ingenuity, his own ability to overcome things. There's a line in the book, relatively late in the book, where he's thinking that people always underestimate him. They always think that they don't think he can do things he says he can do, and that duster is a symbol of that. He rebuilt that duster when he gets out, as a young man, and so definitely a symbol and a metaphor for a lot that he finds he holds dear.
And now a big relationship, I should say, there's the father-son relationship, and father, mainly off stage, but has a tremendous role in this book. His father. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, he's basically, if Bug is Hamlet, then Anthony, his father, is Hamlet's father's ghost, and is the former king of Denmark. And he weighs on his son's mind and psyche a lot. I think as we meet Bug at the beginning of the book, he has his father on a pedestal. And I think he does that out of a sense of necessity. I think he does that to survive. I think his father leaves, and I leave it sort of ambiguous as to why he leaves and what happens, but he's gone. And so for Bug, he wants to love his father, so he loves the memory of the man. And it's sort of sad, it's sort of tragic, because there's a part of him that's immature in a way, because he can't let go of that image of his father. Conversely, if you contrast that with his mother is just full of venom and hatred for his father, because his father left her to raise a son by herself. And so, you have these two contrasting views of this man, but at one point Bug says, his father just left a huge hole in the world when he went missing. And so I think for Bug, that relationship is fraught with multiple emotions of love and tenderness and remembrance, but also a certain level of toxicity and a certain level of despair. And he desperately does not want his sons to go through what he did, or his daughter for that matter.
Right. It's interesting because the car itself, the duster that we've been talking about, is takes on a greater symbolic importance. Because when they're about to lose the garage, his wife's like, just sell the duster. Sell the duster. He's like, I can't do that, man. I can't do it.
He can't bring himself to do it.
Can't do it.
I've had people tell me that, man, if he just listened to his wife, this book would be 7 pages long.
That's right.
But he can't do it not just because of the emotional connection, but also, it like you said, it's a symbol for him. He at one point says it's his father's tombstone, in a way. And so I think, again, there's a level of immaturity in a way that he can't get past that. And all great, well, I won't say great, I think Bug's a good character, I don't want to sound pretentious, but all good characters have a fatal flaw, and I think that's Bug's fatal flaw, is his inability to let go of the past.
It's interesting because you don't hear that term talked about very much these days, but I think you're absolutely right. There is that classical. I think the Greeks came up with it, didn't they? I mean, the notion
the Greeks, the hero's journey and the fatal flaw, and that the hero has everything. It's the Achilles heel, so to speak. And I think that's definitely Bug's, is his inability to let go of the past. He has, he's doing the best he can, and he has a lot in his life now that he could embrace. He loves his sons. He loves his wife. He loves his daughter. He even loves his mother, even though they have a contentious relationship. But there's something about the memory and the idea of his father that he can't let go of.
And there's also, there's this whole notion of, physical competence. In his life as a mechanic, he's very competent physically. And also, that other life of his. He was known as the best getaway car driver on the Eastern Seaboard, right? And so his only outlet now, the outlet is the illegal drag racing that he does at night, and that kind of connects him to that world.
I'm fascinated with identity, and I'm fascinated with the idea of, there's our real face and our public face and the face we don't show anyone, and I think I'm fascinated with that idea that Bug is, Beauregard is a father and a husband and a business owner and a son and a friend, and Bug is this outlaw wheelman, and who is the real person who controls this vessel. And I think I think it's a combination of the two. I think we're all, contain multitudes, if you will. But I think for Bug, it's a difficult, he has a lot of trouble deciding that. He has a lot of trouble letting go of the negative aspects of his personality, because, he feels alive when he's, driving. He feels alive. He feels good when he fixes up a car and soups it up and puts bulletproof glass in it. And, he's like an addict, and it's hard for addicts to see the downside to their addiction. He says it, he pays lip service to it, but until certain things happen in the book, he doesn't really get it. And so, sometimes for an addict, they have to hit rock bottom before they can get better. And for Bug, I think he does hit, there's things that happen, I won't give it away in the book, where he definitely feels like he's hit rock bottom.
Yeah, and we can't give away too many spoilers, but it's funny, one of the classic kind of setups in the I guess what you'd call the noir novel is, a character like Bug who's he's at a crossroads, really. And, out of desperation, he makes an ill-advised move, shall we say. And he gets in with these, and I love this cast of characters, because it's like, you just know this ain't gonna work right,
It's the gang. They're the gang that can't shoot straight. He's a professional, but they're definitely the gang that can't shoot straight.
Yeah, this is like a Keystone Cops kind of operation, I thought that was real fun. I mean, as I say, they this ill-advised diamond heist scheme, and I detected a little bit of Elmore Leonard in there, kind of a little homage to the knuckleheads that you come across in an Elmore Leonard novel. Was he an influence at all?
Oh, definitely. Elmore Leonard was a huge influence. I think I remember the first book I read of his. It has two titles. Some people know it as Swag, and some people know it as Ryan's Rules. And he just set down this template that's so raw and real and relatable. He was one of the first writers I read that moved away from the LA, California noir of Raymond Chandler and Ross McDonald into a more workman-like Midwestern noirish. He has more in common with like Theodore Dreiser and Frank Norris than he does Raymond Chandler. These are down on their luck people, and sometimes they're smarter than they may appear, and sometimes they're pretty dumb, and they're real, living flesh and blood characters. And so he was a big influence on my early writing, and even to this day. And so, yeah, Ronnie and Reggie and Quan are definitely guys that are overestimate their abilities. That's a nice way of putting it.
Prisons around the country are packed with guys like that, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, there are no master criminals in real life, and I think I wanted to show that too. I wanted to show that, Ronnie's he's very charming. He's a great idea man, but he's not good with the details, and the devil's in the details. And even though Bug is pretty good, you're only as strong as your weakest link in anything. And so I wanted to show that as well.
Can you talk a little bit, more about your background? Where you grew up, and and how you came. I was reading a little bit in Paula's really terrific piece about how important reading was to you, your family, and how you were encouraged to read, and also about how I think it was your mother who encouraged you to change the endings of stories that you didn't like.
When I was born in a small town in Virginia called Matthews County. It's the smallest county in Virginia, population around 7,000. And like when I was a young man, my mother and father separated, and we had to move in with my grandmother. And for me, reading was such an incredible escape, and my mom encouraged it. You know, she really was a fan of educating yourself. She herself loved Greek mythology. My grandmother loved romance novels. She loved the trashier, the better. So I absorbed all of that. You know, I would pick up my grandma's trashy romance novels. I'd pick up my mom's books about Roman and Greek mythology. I had an aunt that loved Stephen King, and so I remember riding my bicycle to the library and just immersing myself in books. As an escape, you know, like I said, we grew up, we struggled. You know, my mom struggled. She was physically, she had a physical disability, but she still tried to work, and you know, and so you find that books can be this incredible doorway to a whole nother world. And so I grew up in a family that really pushed that they enjoyed that I had an uncle who had all the John D. McDonald books, and so he just gave them to me one day. And so I grew up reading all that kind of stuff. But I also read. There was a thrift store in our town that we would go to sometimes, and they had a bin where you could get 5 paperbacks for $1. And so, but you didn't ever know what was in the bin, so I would just grab stuff and take it up to the front. And I got everything from, you know, the biography of Peter the Great to the work of like old English writers like Dorothy L. Sayers, you know, everything. The Legend of Don Quixote, and so I read all of that, and so reading became this sort of incredible self-education model for me, but also I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with stories, and so when I was a kid, when I was a little kid, my mom would read stories to me, sometimes fairy tales, sometimes Greek mythology, and I would complain sometimes about the ending. And one day she got really frustrated with me, and she said, "Well, if you don't like the story, write your own." And she's like, "You can end it any way you want." And I did. I was 7 or 8, and I wrote this reimagining of The Night Before Christmas. And it was, my mom really liked it, and she told my teacher about it. And it ended up getting published in our local paper in a Christmas edition. So that's my first published work. And I didn't really take up writing again seriously until my 11th grade year in high school. I had a teacher named Jeff Bone who really he just really influenced me and really encouraged me to really get serious about writing. Like, he would give me books that weren't on the syllabus. He would give me like E.B. White's, not E.B. White, Schrunk's, The Elements of Style, and stuff like that. He would give me like I said, really dense books like Crime and Punishment and books like that. And I just fell in love with writing and reading. I really wanted, when I first started writing, I wanted to be a horror writer. And I didn't think I was necessarily suited to writing crime fiction. And I struggled as a horror writer for a long time. And what happened was, about 10 years ago, a friend of mine went to New York, and she met Todd Robinson at a bar where he managed a bar that was his day job, and his other gig was publishing his magazine. And he was telling her he needed stories for his magazine. And she said, "You should write a crime story." And I wanted to, I just didn't know how to translate crime stories into a small town setting, because I wanted to write about where I grew up. And reading Winter's Bone by Daniel Woodrell, reading Provinces of Night by William Gay, reading A Lesson Before Dying by Ernest J. Gaines kind of gave me this framework. So I wrote this story, it got published, and I found my niche. I found, you know, I was way more successful as a crime writer than I ever was as a horror writer. So.
What kind of horror stories were you trying your hand at?
Oh man, I was doing a lot of Stephen King pastiche. So it was a lot of weird werewolf. I remember one I wrote where it was a pack of, instead of werewolves, it was a group of lions that moved into a small town. That was not good. That was horrible. But I learned from those experiences. I tell you what, I never sold one of the horror stories when I was like in high school, but I got a really cool rejection letter from a magazine called, and I know it's out of print now, it was a magazine, that's how old I am, I was sending self-addressed envelopes, and a magazine called Midnight Graffiti. It was a horror magazine, and I forgot the man's name, but the editor, he rejected my story, but he wrote a really long personal rejection and told me things that he thought I was doing well, and told me things I needed to work on, and it just kept me going. And you know, moments like that are ones that I treasure, because he probably don't even know who I am. I don't know where he is. I can't remember the man's name, but he gave me just enough of incentive to keep going. And so, like I said, eventually I found my tribe, so to speak. I found my niche with crime writing.
Isn't that amazing? You mentioned the importance of that one teacher that you had, and you come across, you could go either way, and all of a sudden you meet somebody who pushes you in the right direction. And I remember I read somewhere where you said, although your background wasn't the same as Bug's, you could have gone the Bug route.
Oh yeah, I mean, I knew I had friends. I think we all know people that you grew up with, especially if you grew up in a small town. There are people who are fun to hang out with, the good time party guys and gals, and there are people that are a little further to the left of that. And I definitely knew people like that. And I never did anything like Bug did. I never got in any serious trouble. I've been in my mom's gonna hate this. I've been in my share of bar fights, but I never did anything like Bug. But I definitely knew guys and gals who went that direction, and for different reasons. Some out of pure desperation, some out of a sense of longing to belong. And so I feel like I try to do justice to those people and their memories and those stories and those experiences that I saw from afar, because I think those stories are important to tell. I think it's important for people to realize, there's an idea that people who commit crimes are greedy, and some of them are lazy, but a lot of people sometimes are just they're desperate, and when you're staring down the long, hard barrel of paying the electric bill or getting medicine for your baby because they got the croup, a lot of people make a decision that maybe it's not a wise one, but sometimes you feel like it's the only one you have. I think it was Dennis Lehane, I heard one time somebody said that. He said noir is bad people doing bad things for the right reasons, and I definitely believe that.
That's interesting. Yeah. I like James Ellroy's definition of noir. You know it?
I don't know about her, so I'm gonna let you say it.
You're fucked.
Yeah. yeah. That's a more succinct way of saying it. But yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think, and that's the difference between noir and hard-boiled fiction.
Yeah.
Right? I think with hard-boiled fiction, your hero or heroine or your protagonist usually survives. They're battered and bruised. It's the what was that detective? It's the Mannix principle. You beat the crap, but you made it. You survived, and even if the bad guys maybe got away, you got some retribution. With noir, you might survive, but you're not winning. You're broken. You're damaged. Sometimes you don't even make it out with your life. And I think that's a big difference between hard-boiled fiction can have a sense of optimism at the end. Noir is almost always either very, very realistic or almost pessimistic, and I do think there's a difference. Like my first novel, My Darkest Prayer, is a hard-boiled novel. It's dark, there's violence and action, but at the end of that book, the protagonist, he still has a pretty good handle on things. There's a sense of optimism going forward. Blacktop Wasteland is different. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, noir, you can tell why the French really loved it, and continue to love it to this day. There's that just that existential bleakness of it, and
yes.
Yeah. Well, I got to ask, kind of going back to the beginning, tell us a little bit about your jobs that you've had, and especially this mascot gig that you had.
So there's a national chain that will remain nameless, but they sell a lot of chicken sandwiches. And I got a job. I got to go back. So I went to college, and I didn't finish college. I had to come out to help my mom. She had gotten ill, actually more ill. And after she got a little better, I felt like I needed a change of scenery for a while. So I did a whole Jack Kerouac thing. I went on the road and went out west for a while. And when I came back, I needed to get a job. And I got a job at this unnamed fast food chain as their cow mascot. So I had to put the cow outfit on, and it was like the middle of June, and it was so hot. Oh my God, it was so hot. And they didn't want me to take the head off. I had to come inside. It was a whole process. And I made it for 6 hours and I quit. I was like, I can't do this. So I got a job doing construction for a while. I started working nights at a bar, bouncing, and I saw a lot of interesting interactions there. Um, After a while, I found a job working as a manager at a large retail hardware chain. I did that for a number of years, and then when I wanted to focus more on my writing, I needed more time. I knew someone who owned their own funeral home, and so I was able to move in and work. Not move in, but move on and work there. And hopefully now I'll be able to actually write full time. We'll see how things go. So, but I've had a lot of different jobs, and in between that, I've done everything from I worked on fishing boats, I've worked on farms, I worked I drove livestock back and forth from the farm to a slaughterhouse for a while. I've done a lot of different things. I worked in a pawn shop that got raided by the ATF. So I've done a lot of different things.
With the current gig at the funeral home, what exactly do you do?
I basically I'm a retrieval associate. So I go pick up bodies, I transport bodies, I do general maintenance around the building. My boss is pretty easygoing. She's my wife, so and so I was really helping her with that. And then my writing's starting to do a little better. I kind of scaled back. I still do stuff around, not as much as I used to. But I actually set my second novel, My Darkest Prayer, in a funeral home. The protagonist works at a funeral home by day. He's a unlicensed private investigator by night. And so I'd like to revisit him in the future sometime. I haven't done so yet, but I'd love to go back. I like there are characters from Darkest Prayer that are referenced in Blacktop Wasteland, and in my next novel that I'm currently working on, there are characters from Blacktop Wasteland and Darkest Prayer that are referenced in that. So I'm creating the S.A. Cosby shared universe.
That's cool. That's really cool. Yeah, I became aware of My Darkest Prayer. I need to pick up a copy of that. Check it out. Is your new publisher, are they going to reissue that, or is there any talk of that?
There's some talk of that. It has nothing been set in stone yet, but there's some talk of that. And I like I said, I've had Blacktop Wasteland out now, and it was a 2-book deal with Flatiron. And the next book I'm in the middle of revising right now. It's a revenge novel called Razorblade Tears, and it takes place in Southern Virginia too. It's pretty much the same area, but it's about 2 fathers, one black, one white, whose sons were married and were murdered in what appears to be a hate crime. And so these 2 fathers happen to be ex-cons. So these 2 men, former men of violence, decide to investigate the murders, not only to seek vengeance for their sons, but also redeem themselves for the callous way they treated their boys growing up once they reveal their sexuality. And so it's a story of redemption and revenge. Wow. And I'm hard at work on that, revising now.
Wow, that sounds like a great setup for a book.
I hope so. I really I enjoy writing it. I think crime fiction is one of the best genres or mediums to talk about issues that are important in a way that is palatable to people. Or as my mom liked to say, a little bit of honey makes the medicine go down. So you can talk about things that are serious and quite complex through this, through the manner of car chases and gun shootouts and bloody altercations. And I think I think crime fiction, because crime impacts everyone's life. I think, not everyone is desperate enough to rob a bank or steal from a crime boss, but we all are impacted by it. And so I think it's a great medium to talk about, like I said, very complex issues. And so it's definitely something that I've used as a way to work through certain issues of my own and to talk about things that are important to me.
Also, I agree with that, and it's through the crime novel you get a real sense of what's kind of going on at the street level in American cities and in worldwide cities, really, but in a way that often, who wants to read another book about the angst of the white professor up in, up on the
I mean,
up on the vineyard somewhere.
If you're gonna read a book like that, I suggest John Irving. But
Irving,
I think I love John Irving.
Yeah.
But to your point, I just read a book last year. I'd never heard of this book before. I was lucky enough to meet the author at BoucherCon. It's a book called Cottonmouths by Kelly J. Ford, and it's a crime novel set in Arkansas. And the main character is a young woman, who is just coming into her sexuality, trying to decide maybe she's gay, and she has to drop out of college, and she returns to a small town. And, the shame that she feels for having to come home. There's people there in the small town that will not let her forget that she had to come home. And she finds herself kind of on the outs with her parents. She has nowhere to go, and she falls in with her childhood friend, who may or may not be selling crystal meth. And so, like you said, you're getting a snapshot of what's going on in America, like you said, on the ground level. Right. Because, she comes out of college at the same time that the financial crisis hits in 2012, and so her parents are struggling. They can't really help her, and so the lure of easy money is definitely impacted by what was going on at that time. We all suffered through, and so to your point, I definitely feel like crime novels really are able to tap that vein of what's actually going on with the people, like you said, on the ground.
Absolutely. Let's see. Let me just check and see if I have some questions from our Facebook audience.
No problem.
Let's see. Okay. Let's see here. I have a question. I'm not sure exactly how to phrase this. It says... Oops, lost him for a second there.
I'm here. Oh, shoot. We still here?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, there's a woman named Kat who writes, I need to know, how do you plot the action so it isn't repetitive? I think that's what she's saying. So maybe just a writerly question about plotting and action.
Basically, I try to make sure that everything that I read a really good book one time called Story by Robert McKee. He was writing about screenwriting, but it helps with novel writing. Every chapter should have a change. So if the chapter starts with a negative, you should try to end it on a positive. If it starts with a positive, try to end it with a negative. And that helps keep your action propulsive. It helps keep the action going forward. I'm not a big fan of, I think you can use like a flashback here and there, but if you're really trying to keep the novel moving, you definitely need to have like a rhythm. It's like music. If you want to keep that tempo, and as you get closer to the end, you want to raise the tempo, speed it up, make things happen faster and faster until, the inevitable conclusion.
Yep, absolutely. Now, are you somebody... there are kind of questions you could ask any writer, which is, does the plot come first for you, or does everything come from character?
I think the plot comes first, but it's determined by the character. And what I mean is, like, the way I work, I'm not an outliner, and I'm not a pantser. I'm kind of in the middle. I like to write myself a pretty detailed synopsis of the story or the idea. And once I've got a good grasp on where I'm trying to go, then I can adjust the characters, accordingly. So with Blacktop Wasteland, I knew the kind of story I wanted to tell. I knew that it was going to be a heist. I knew there might be other heists in the novel, like subsequent heists, and I knew how I wanted it to end. I wanted it to end with Beauregard having to make a difficult choice. And I knew I wanted I wanted Duster to play a role. And so with that synopsis, I was able to kind of fill in the blanks as I wrote. And, the story is very different from the synopsis I wrote. But if you looked at both of them, you can see the skeleton or the outline of the original synopsis there. So if the plot is sort of the blueprint, and then the story is actually building the house. And sometimes when you build a house, you realize, we can't put that extra mudroom in there. So you got to work around that. And I think that's part of the excitement and the fun of writing, is when sometimes you have to work around things and figure out a way to make things work reasonably.
Do you ever write yourself into a corner and kind of have to back out?
Yeah, I think every writer has done that. I write myself in the corners, and then I have to really think hard. I try not to. I definitely don't want to do a Deus Ex Machina, but I definitely try to work my way around that. Every once in a while, you might have a throw a coincidence in there. I mean, coincidences happen in real life, so as long as you use them judiciously, I think you'll be all right. But I've written myself in the corners and just had to force my way through it and just figure it out. And then though doing so, though, I'm able to pass that tension and that stress along to the character.
I have a number of people watching just saying how much they enjoyed the book, and there's a woman who mentions the audiobook. She says she's almost finished listening to it. How do you like the audiobook? Did it turn out?
I love it. Oh my God, the narrator is a gentleman named Adam Lazar-White. He's an actor and voice actor, and also he's done. And I was telling somebody the other day, I wish my grandmother was still with us, because one of his roles is he played a character on the soap opera Young and the Restless. And if anybody's a certain age and you had a grandmother, they watched the Young and the Restless when you were growing up. And so I wish she was still with us so I could tell her that she would be tickled pink. But in all seriousness, I thought he did an incredible job with the character. When I heard his voice, they sent me the I guess the advanced tape or some of the audition tapes and stuff. And when I heard his voice, he sounded like I thought Bug would sound if he was a real person. And so, you don't have as much say in these things as people might think, but I definitely put my 2 cents in it. I really, really thought he nailed it, and he did. I've listened to the whole book. I know it sounds self-indulgent, but I've listened to the whole audiobook, and it's strange, because I'll tell you one thing that I noticed with the audiobook. There's a secondary antagonist in the book named Lazy Mothersbaugh, and I've had people who read the book that told me he was creepy, and I take that as a compliment. But I didn't really see it when I was writing it. I've read the book, numerous times. But when he did the voice for Lazy, I'm like, oh yeah, he's creepy as hell. Oh man, Jiminy Christmas.
That's cool. What a compliment too, that the actor, interpreted it the way you wanted to.
Oh yeah, he definitely did. It was amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Shawn, let's wrap it up here. I just wanted to say congratulations. I wish you all the best with the book. And you kindly signed a bunch of them for us, and we are sold out. So
oh wow,
that's so cool.
Oh man, that's great. Thank you guys, man. I'm such a fan of of the store, and I'm just so happy that you guys had me. This was great. Like I said, anybody that's ever met me in person or has run across me in a bar at a book convention can tell you I'll talk about writing all day long. So I appreciate you letting me pontificate and ramble a little bit.
Oh, not at all. And hopefully, when the world changes and we get back to some semblance of normality, we'll have you out here in the desert for a real live event.
Love it.
I would
love it, man. Yes, sir. I would love to be there.
All right. Well, all the best, and thanks again. Have a great rest of the night.
All right. Thank you. Thank you guys for attending. I appreciate it.
Thanks everybody for watching too. All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks everybody.